Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being with us. And thanks to the MIT Open DocLab and Phi for hosting us at this hopefully going to be a wonderful conference. So Caspar works is head of DocLab at IDFA. I work at the R&D department of the Netherlands Institute for Sound and Vision. And we wanted to take the liberty to open up with an XKCD comic for those of you who have seen too many in their lifetime. There's a reason. Caspar and I know each other from an open-air film festival where we once did live open-air installation of XKCD comics. And this one is specifically fitting to the theme of today because one of the great promises of the digital world was that we could keep on copying and keep on things safe, thinking that degradation wasn't really going to be an issue like it is with film, like it is with video, like it is with a lot of audiovisual formats that we have. But in reality, it all depends on how you do it. We'll be coming back later in the day. Right now, Caspar is going to introduce a lot of the projects that DocLab has been presenting and the kind of works that we really want to zoom in on today. And then we'll come back in the afternoon after you heard some more about strategies and approaches to see like how do they apply or not to the kind of works that we want to show you.
Thank you, Aaron. So just to quickly get a sense of the room, who of you knows IDFA? Okay, so that's quite a lot, so I'll skip the part. We're having our 30th anniversary in November. For those of you who didn't raise their hand, IDFA is one of the world's biggest documentary film festivals. And 10 years ago, we started IDFA DocLab, which was around the same time that I think Sundance started New Frontier, that it was shortly before Apple launched the iPhone upon us. And what we do at that program, it's basically within the context of the world's biggest documentary festival, we try to create a space for the stuff that isn't linear film, but still nonfiction art. So over the years, the program has developed greatly, and we feature a competition where each year we premiere about 20 of the latest interactive nonfiction projects from all over the world. We organize exhibitions where each year we have like 30 projects and installations, and we organize live events. Some people in this low-res... Brett is right over there. Anyway. Just to show that the interactive documentary field is a small but intimate field. Besides that, we have the financing market at IDFA for films, but also for cross-media. We have a training program, we commission projects, and we do a lot more. But let's take a step back to 2007. So again, right before Apple released the iPhone and the internet was unleashed into the pockets and everyday lives of everyone around us. And I think that time kind of felt a little bit like this. I think, as William said, like the sort of the hype around newness. The biggest problem of the word new media, I think, is the word new, because that's not really the thing that I fell in love with when I started seeing amazing projects that fell into this category. And I think, after a couple of years, this is sort of the quote that I started every presentation with to sort of explain, like, this is not about film, there's nothing wrong with film, cinema is amazing, but the internet doesn't necessarily just have to be a platform where we distribute films onto. It's actually a new thing that we could actually that enables us to create new forms of art. And I think in the last years, the interactive documentary community has been growing up. It has paved the way for new forms of storytelling, journalism, art, and even in some cases business models, although that is a highly contested point. But I do think the result is that we now have a small but international ecosystem that connects artists, producers, festivals, institutions, tech players, publishers, etc. And last November, we were lucky enough to celebrate our 10-year anniversary, which is an interesting thing. If you're doing a new media program and everything's about new, then we're like 10 years old. We suddenly felt, how do we like frame that? What does that mean? And I think this year we're going to explore a lot what the next 10 years means. But last year we felt it was a good moment to sort of keep score, take note of what has happened in the last decade. And I think on your seats you found a little booklet that has this cover. which is a thing we launched at the festival called the Interactive Documentary Canon. And it's a list of the 100 best projects made in the last 10 years, collectively curated by around 30 new media artists, curators, other key figures in this community. And I do urge you all to check it out. There are stickers inside for your kids or for yourself or for your laptop. And it's a good way to sort of explore, I think, what interactive documentary is and can be. Inside that booklet, there's also this spread. It's the buzzword bingo. It's a bingo card. You can use it today if you have a pen. The first one to say bingo, I don't know, gets the Magnet Deluxe version of the booklet. And I think the sort of, besides the joke, the point of it is that after 10 years of seeing, I think, some of the most amazing interactive digital masterpieces, early masterpieces, works that we want to see 10 years from now, be able to see 10 years from now, maybe even 100 years from now in some cases. I think most of us still don't really know how to define what we're doing. We've had the word transmedia. Some people are jokingly using the word intermersive currently. The point is, I think, we can talk an entire day with academics and practitioners on what word to use. I think we're using interactive documentary here today. The word is problematic. But the point for us was like, maybe let's not try to define it and find the word, but maybe define it by just looking. After 10 years, we can look at the body of work and we can see maybe what are some of the types of experiences that we tend to put under the missing tag word that we don't have the word, but we do have the experiences. So what we want to do today is show you a couple of examples. Some of them I'll just mention, and you can go online and check them out for yourself if you are able to get Flash working again. A couple of them are you can see upstairs, and all of them you can access through the Moments of Innovation website, which we're relaunching today, which is an initiative we did together with MIT and UPIAN in France. And it's a place where all the 100 projects are collected in different timelines. And you can see it upstairs in the exhibition place as well. So first category, I would say first and foremost, interactive experiences. And one of my personal, and I think one of the sort of completely undisputed masterpieces of interactive documentary is Bear 71. Janine Steele of the NFB is here today so that she can address it a little bit further. We'll talk about it, how it's being preserved later this afternoon. And you can also see a walkthrough of it upstairs in the exhibition. Another one, Vincent, right over there on the first row, Vincent Morissette. I think one of my favorite interactive artworks, not necessarily a documentary, but let's not be too, let's not be hung up on that. But this is, I think, a project that this is my kid's favorite interactive project. It's my dad's favorite interactive project. It's one of my favorite interactive projects. It's a project that will work and mesmerize you 50 years from now if you're still alive. And Vincent will be speaking later today about this and some of his other projects. But I think for many, the quintessential interactive documentary is Gaza Sderot, made in 2008 by, I think, 7 co-producers from France, Palestine, and Israel. And I'll just show you a short trailer to start with. So, Gaza Sderot released in 2008, and it kind of uses every sort of main staple of an interactive story. You can navigate the story through a timeline, an interactive timeline. You can navigate it through the faces you see upstairs or on the top, through character. You can watch each project by character. You can also watch the projects via map. Not necessarily the most interesting feature, but it does work. Um, let's see. It should loop. It doesn't. The point I wanted to make with this one is if you can see a little mouse pointer going to the left and right, the whole project is told in split screen, uploading for 2 months. They uploaded 2 videos on each side, I think every 2 days. And the thing that everybody does when they first encounter this project is they try to get both videos to play at the same time. It's just like, I guess, sort of what does this button do type approach that every human being has. You want to see how it works. How do you get it to work? And it took me a little while to realize, like, there's actually a lot of meaning in that experience, because then you realize you can't play 2 videos at the same time. You can only play one, and then you'll hear one. The other one never goes away completely, but you're always listening to always experiencing one of the 2 sides of the conflict. And in a way, besides the films, the short films that are in this project that we need to preserve, that interface is actually just as much part of the experience. Because you realize as you go through the experience that basically you can't listen, or you can't empathize with 2 sides at the same time. You can only emotionally connect with one of the 2 sides. And the fact that you then realize how you're going back and forth between the 2. When do you go to the other side? When do you get bored with the complaining on one side and you go to the other side? Or whatever it is that happens personally with you is what creates, I guess, the interactive documentary experience, where it's not just the films that they put in front of you, it's your own behavior with the project, how you interface with it, that creates the meaning of it. So it makes it personal for everybody else. Doesn't make it uncurated, doesn't mean that you're calling all the shots. It's just a very unique experience, and if you want to preserve that, you need to preserve the interface just as much as you do the videos and the media inside. Another category, of course, is data and algorithms. I think these are the deeply sort of projects that could only exist on the internet. A great example of this is Chris Milk and Aaron Coblin's The Wilderness Downtown, together with the homegrown Arcade Fire, which asks you to provide your childhood home address and then pulls in data from Google Street View to create a uniquely personalized music video. Another example, more recent one, if you guys have Chrome installed on your phone, you can try it right now. It's Word.camera by Ross Goodwin, an AI artist. And this is a project that connects to neural networks on the web to analyze a picture you take with your Word camera device, and then takes that picture and turns it into a computer-generated piece of poetry that describes what actually is in your picture. So take a picture of your loved one and get a computer version poem of your loved one, or see how a computer sees your loved one. And again, it's a project that doesn't exist if we don't have those networks to connect to. But I think, again, here, the quintessential project in this category is We Feel Fine, created by Jonathan Harris and Seb Kamvar in, I think, 2005-6-ish. And I'll show you a sadly very poor, low-res video. friendly, open place where we dare to be vulnerable and share our secrets to the community there instead of heckling each other for being from an opposite political view. This project sort of sucked in all those emotions. It looked for blog posts where the sentence "I feel" featured, and then categorized, then took that blog post and categorized the emotion that people described they were feeling, the moment that they were feeling it, the media attached to it, the weather in the location of the blogger. All these things became this big database called We Feel Fine, which you can use to browse. Basically, it's basically a human almanac of emotions. And this is just one little thing that came out of this project. But like, what happens when an artist gathers that sort of weird, personal, unique data set? Well, one of the things they could do after a couple of years of gathering data was see that in the US, the locations where people were saying that they felt fat, while they actually, based on census data in those states, most people are on average thin, were New York and California and these ones. And it's sort of the opposite, where like on the other side you had the states where people were actually fat but were feeling thin. And this is a couple of years old, but I think it would be interesting to compare it to other sort of regional differences in the US and see how that compares. We'll talk about We Feel Fine later again in the session this afternoon. Moving on, participation. I'll go very quickly. These are projects where the participation of the user doesn't just influence the flow of the story, but actually becomes part of the story itself. A great example of this is Question Bridge by Kamal Sinclair, which enabled its users, mostly black men, to redefine what black male identity in America means or is. And I think the most famous example of participatory collaborative storytelling is still High Rise, a monument of that by Kat Cizek, which will be, as said, featured this afternoon in a case study. Live and communal projects, for lack of a better term, I think these are projects that only exists if we use them all together at the same time. This is an example from Moniker, Dutch artist collective, who created this monument for the computer mouse as the iPad was sort of killing the mouse in a way. And this is a project that records everybody's mouse movements. My favorite, though, is the Somebody app by Miranda July. Has anybody in here tried the Somebody app by Miranda July? Did you get it to work? Okay. We'll get back to that in the afternoon session. Just to briefly explain the Somebody app was a messaging app on top of WhatsApp and your text and whatever services you have, to not have direct communications with your friends, but actually to complicate things by having the message. If I would send a message to Vincent, it would actually go to someone in this room, and that person would get my message and would then be invited to find Vincent and deliver my message to him, perform my message to that person. And so the final two categories, I would say, one is television helmets or virtual reality or augmented reality or everything else. And I think as much as the hype is, I think literally we've gone past the hype cycle. As the sad news is from yesterday that Facebook pulled the plug on the Oculus Story Studio. For those of you who are in this space, and that's really bad and sad news. But it's interesting in terms of interactive documentary and virtual reality. That actually was an interactive documentary artist or a multimedia journalist, Nani de la Peña, who once hired an intern called Palmer Lucky to work on her weird VR installations that didn't have any existing devices. And he then used what he learned there to go on and create Oculus. And basically kickstarted the sort of rebirth of virtual reality. I think it's, in terms of preservation discussions, virtual reality is a really interesting one because on the one side, artists like, for instance, Oscar Raby, who make interactive virtual reality projects, they're doing a lot of sort of what we call preservation work for old projects, in the sense they just do it now. So they keep porting their work for every new device that comes out, every new sort of code language that comes out. They are actively preserving, like migrating their projects from device to device. Strangers by Felix and Paul, a great symbol of 360 video. You can see it upstairs again in the installation. They have their studio right across the street. But in this case, it's a 360 video, basically a linear video file. So that is something you could, that basically is the same conversation as film in terms of preservation. It's just a file. And then finally, hardware-based projects. Famous Desk was here, I think last year. This is a sensory, smell-based, incredibly immersive experience. You go into one of those cabinets. But this is, how do you preserve this? This, I think, is a museum question, right? And finally, a project that we commissioned a couple of years ago. Same, it's uniquely custom-built hardware and software of a little robot that tried to answer the question, can robots replace documentary filmmakers at some point? I tend to bring it with me if I do presentations, so it's right here. And if anybody wants to get interviewed and have impolite questions asked to them, come and find me and you'll get the chance. And if anybody knows how to maintain some of this, and fix some of the glued circuits inside, do talk to me too as well, because it's starting to crumble. And with that, I think I'm going to hand you back to Erwin, because as a preview of what we're doing this afternoon in terms of preservation strategies, because this is basically where we are as artists and festivals, I think.
I think it's not just you artists, but my part of the community in the archiving domain has been doing a lot of the third. But we hope to have come up with some, at least midway answers, or at least some sort of common approaches that we'll be coming back to and applying. I think one important message that was mentioned this morning by William is that selection. What do we keep? What do we want to keep? And I think the Canon and moments of innovation that you can see upstairs are a really good starting point, and also a good way of measuring where are we at with these specific, this Canon, this specific list of works. And then secondly, sort of deciding who's going to be taking care of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.